Our oceans are at a crossroads. Technology is allowing us to plunder the sea like never before. But it's also providing us with unprecedented insight that could be critical to our survival.
What we've done to the ocean since I began exploring, we've changed more at the same time that we have learned more. I mean, extraordinary new discoveries about the ocean. The existence of life from the surface all the way to the greatest depths. The importance of microbes. The importance of phytoplankton in terms of generating oxygen. More than half of the oxygen in the atmosphere comes from life in the sea. We didn't know that when I began exploring the ocean. What else is out there that we don't know that is at risk because of the actions that we're taking in ignorance?
In 1970, Dr. Sylvia Earle led the first all-female team of aquanauts on a groundbreaking expedition. For more than 2 weeks, she lived in a high-tech habitat beneath the Caribbean, conducting exhaustive studies of coral reef ecosystems. It was a transformative experience that keeps her going strong to this day.
At this moment in history, the oceans are in serious trouble in terms of the ability of the ocean to function as the cornerstone of Earth's life support system. Technology enables us to sample and to take ourselves throughout the whole water column and to understand that this is not just rocks and water out there. This is the biggest ecosystem on the planet, and it keeps all the rest of life on Earth functioning. Without the ocean, without the living ocean, the rest of life on Earth could not exist.
For centuries, humans have largely taken our oceans for granted. They were vast, limitless resources, too big to fail. But a perfect storm of ignorance and exploitation is pushing our seas to the brink of collapse.
The projections, if we keep doing business as usual, looks very bleak. Going back to when I began exploring the ocean from beneath the surface in the 1950s to the present time, I've observed and looked at the records. 90% drop in many of the big fish, including the sharks, tunas, swordfish, cod, halibut, groupers, snappers. You know, in every part of the world where humans are deploying these large techniques for exploiting the ocean. I mean, millions of tons. And we think of fish and lobsters and clams by the ton rather than as individual components of our life support system. Most of the fish that are marketed are top carnivores. Take years to get to the point where they can be extracted usefully for human consumption. So, business as usual means catastrophic consequences.
Dr. Earle's renowned half-century career took shape at a unique point in history when human activities started taking a serious toll on the sea. Among the most alarming was the stunning growth of commercial fishing. In just the last 40 years, commercial fisheries have eliminated roughly half of all marine life on our planet.
In the 1960s, there were programs around the world, the United States and elsewhere, trying to look at the ocean with new eyes and mindful that we were aging from 3 billion up to 4 billion rather rapidly. How are we going to feed people? And the idea of food from the sea really caught on. Government policies put in place really focused on how do we get better at capturing more fish from places that have never been fished before. And we really succeeded. We've grown our capacity to extract further deep ocean environments using sonar so that you can deploy exactly where a school of fish is gathering and take them all. The idea of taking a lot of small fish and making fish meal, fish protein, protein powder to help elevate the nutrition of people globally. It really seemed like a great idea.
At the foot of the hill lies colorful Fisherman's Wharf. Typical of the wharf are the steaming kettles of the sidewalk crab stand.
I see the rationale for people consuming wildlife from the sea as a response to marketing. Those who want to create an appetite for fish, an appetite for lobsters and shrimp, because it's a business or it's their profit that they're looking for. We're so good at marketing these wild creatures. And there are markets that have been cultivated around the world for what were known as, in the 50s and 60s, as underutilized species. Let's find ways to market them, get people to eat things that they would never think of eating before. Eat more fish. But we don't see a marketing campaign, eat more mammals or eat more birds. They sort of lump all the 25,000 kinds of fish and all the crustaceans, seafood, as if it's one thing instead of it being thousands of things. We have become so good at catching, at killing ocean wildlife, targeting species that at one time seemed infinite in their capacity to recover no matter how many we took. Catches are just off the chart, but then falling off, as again, our capacity to take far exceeded the capacity of the natural systems to recover from, with consequences that are now disastrous. We have become accustomed to going to restaurants, supermarkets in much of the world, and finding this great array of ocean wildlife.
But there's an even bigger threat that we could be powerless to stop.
The biggest problem facing the ocean is it's what we're putting into the ocean that is causing changes, the toxins, the plastics, the whatever, that we use the ocean as a dump site, as a place to get rid of things that we don't want close to us. People don't see what's happening to the ocean. Scientists see it. I get asked sometimes, do you believe in climate change? Or do you believe that we're overfishing or whatever? And my response is, it's not a matter of believing. Look at the evidence. I, as a scientist, look at the numbers. I look at the evidence. I look at the before. I look at the after. I anticipate where this could take us. Anybody can do the same thing. You can do your homework and look at the pictures that were taken 30, 40, 50 years ago. Or go yourself. Put your face in the water and look at the same place today. That's evidence.
One of the most alarming changes is the explosive growth of dead zones, where periodic drops in oxygen levels allow virtually nothing to survive. More than 500 have been identified worldwide, including in the Gulf of Mexico, where a dead zone chokes off roughly 8,000 square miles of habitat each year.
The idea of dead zones around the coastal waters globally is a new concept that began really in the middle of the 20th century, mostly with the advance of large-scale agriculture, where small farms, local communities, and so on were transformed into these megasystems, systems that have fed the world. But there's a downside that only recently have we begun to understand: the consequences of excess fertilizers. They create dead zones, they consume the oxygen quickly, and everything as a consequence is affected.
The devastating rise in dead zones isn't just being fueled by excess nutrients. More than 90% of the excess heat from global warming is ultimately being absorbed by the sea. That heat is creating bigger, more frequent algae blooms and reducing the amount of oxygen the ocean can hold. And there's a more insidious threat. The greenhouse gas emissions causing that warming are also changing the acidity of our seas.
Ocean acidification is one of those phenomena that I think you could put in the category of surprise, surprise. Anyone who's had an aquarium at home, you check the pH to know, is it where it needs to be to have a healthy system? We just didn't know to think of this as an issue going back 50 years ago, or even 40 years, even 20 years ago, when we began to notice the consequences of excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, not only creating this greenhouse effect, warming the planet. The ocean takes up a lot of it through photosynthesis, absorbing it, but there's a point beyond which it's saturated. Then the carbon dioxide becomes carbonic acid. And the implications are pretty straightforward. As this increase in acidity continues, more and more of life on Earth will be affected one way or the other. And there will be losers, like coral reefs, with their calcium carbonate skeletons. Perhaps the young stages of fish, that at the very formative stages require a certain pH for their backbones to form positively. You think of all of the organisms on Earth that have calcium carbonate shells. In just a few decades, we are seeing a shift that is significant enough to affect the formation of the shell in oysters, in oyster hatcheries. Changing the chemistry of the ocean basically changes everything.
Some progress is being made to turn the tide of threats from overfishing and pollution. But more widespread and basic changes are urgently needed.
I'm encouraged, just in the past 5 years or so, with trends globally of leaders who are beginning to understand the importance of taking care of the ocean. The biggest problem, far and away, is ignorance. It's lack of awareness. People don't know why, at the most basic level, why the ocean matters. Many of them never see the ocean, are not aware that the ocean touches them with every breath they take, every drop of water they drink. We don't learn what makes our lives possible. That needs to change. Of course, we have to keep exploring, documenting, but then to be able to illustrate this in a way that the world understands and will take the actions individually, locally, nationally, internationally, globally, that will save humankind.